The gaming industry has changed exponentially over the past 5 years. There have been many changes in the industry, and I don't think we've yet felt the ramifications of them just yet. From the new console generation, the rise of Xbox, the acquisition of companies, and the introduction of subscription gaming, I'll argue that this is probably the biggest shift we've ever seen in the gaming sphere since the introduction of multiplayer games and live service games that were introduced much later on. Now, the point of this video is to essentially talk about the state of the gaming industry in 2023, discuss the substantial events that have transpired in the space leading up to this point, and perhaps even give you a different perspective that you haven't yet considered. For better or for worse, Xbox and Microsoft have been the ones to trigger all of these things that have transpired, and they've definitely ensured to make a ripple effect in the entire gaming industry. But before we get to that, let's consider the events that led up to this point, and probably the indicators and the reasons why they had to take such an aggressive approach to take the gaming industry by a chokehold. Firstly, let's consider the 8th great console war.
Very well. I hereby declare war on you all. The 8th Great Console War begins now.
Now, of course, by that you understand that I mean, of course, PlayStation and Xbox haven't been going at it for 8 generations, but this, in terms of numbering, is the 8th generation of consoles that we've experienced, and in terms of a battle standpoint, it's not looking good for the Microsoft stand. The last battle ended in an embarrassing defeat for Xbox, a landslide victory for PlayStation Studios as a whole. And clearly, Microsoft are some clear losers because they did not take this defeat very well. As you can see in this next generation, the 9th generation of consoles, they took very aggressive steps to take themselves to the next level. Now, gentlemen, what primarily led to the success of Sony and PlayStation were 2 main components. Firstly, their mindset towards gaming. Regardless of the circumstances, Sony ensured to put their customers first. They showed that they genuinely cared through their actions.
This is how you share your games on PS4.
Thanks.
PlayStation.
If you're looking for any video that's going to properly summarize the past console war that we experienced, it is essentially this advert right here. Clearly, the decisions that Xbox were making were truly not in favor of the gamer, and this is why they essentially lost the battle and ended up losing a huge amount of their fan base over to PlayStation. PlayStation were ensuring that you as a customer were definitely being rewarded for being a PlayStation customer. You got many exclusive deals, skins, cosmetics just for being a PlayStation customer and having a PlayStation 4. From Call of Duty skins, cosmetics and other games, exclusive modes. If you just cast your mind back, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, I remember, had a specific Spec Ops mode that was only specific to PlayStation in the first year. And as you know, Call of Duty have an annual release cycle. So after 1 year, that version of Call of Duty, in terms of a player base and updates, it all tanks as they move all their resources onto the new release of Call of Duty. So essentially for the entire year and in its prime, all the other people who are on Microsoft, on PC, on any other platform were unable to get the full entire Call of Duty Modern Warfare experience. And Spider-Man is a property owned by Marvel and Sony, and because of this, they were able to have a specific character that was only unique for PlayStation. Consider Marvel Avengers, the game that was released a few years ago. Spider-Man was only playable if you owned a PlayStation console. At the time, it was only the PlayStation 4. So if you were not on PlayStation 4, you weren't going to play Spider-Man. And this was an incentive for people to ensure that they had a PlayStation 4 or they bought their copy of Avengers on PlayStation 4, so eventually they would get that Spider-Man update that all the other people weren't going to get. More and more reasons for you to definitely move over to PlayStation. While I think some of these things that they did, PlayStation did, weren't exactly good for the entire gaming community as a whole and perhaps would start some bad precedents in the future, they were definitely providing games with plenty incentive to move to PlayStation. Clearly, the intentions of Xbox were to secure the bag. The decisions that they made clearly show this. They interacted in put in things such as DRM, which is essentially registering a game onto your console. You install it, and after you've done that, you aren't able to lend it or sell it to any other person. They won't be able to install the game on their console as well. Essentially what's done with quite a number of PC disc games. Clearly, the other thing that we're trying to do is trying to turn Xbox into your entire home entertainment system. So they were focusing on things that gamers really weren't that interested in. They forgot what gamers loved. They forgot why people became fans of Xbox in the very first place. Games. PlayStation didn't make this mistake. They did not make this mistake at all. This takes me to the second reason why the last generation was so successful before PlayStation. As an organization, they were able to get a large number of their studios to develop and release games that were Game of the Year contenders from the years of 2016 all up to 2021 and 2022. They were able to compete at the highest level from a gaming standpoint. High quality games released on a very, very good schedule. No matter how you scratched it, no matter how you slice it, no matter what happened, PlayStation were going to deliver an 8, 9, 10 out of 10 eventually at some point, no matter who makes the game. Even a company that isn't even owned by PlayStation Studios, From Software, made Bloodborne an absolute classic, a game that has definitely motivated many people to go out and procure a PlayStation 4 just so they can play Bloodborne. It is essentially kind of like Dark Souls in a different setting, but it definitely is still a very high quality, fast-paced game that is a whole lot of fun, and I definitely do look forward to the eventual sequel that they release to that game. PlayStation has won over 3 awards from the Game Awards, the official ones that are the most popular, where all the big gamers and developers come and pull through to. They've won multiple awards from their studios, and they keep winning. And even if they don't win, they're coming second place, or they are top tier contenders. These studios have been able to even completely change genres from the companies and the games that they usually make. Let's consider Horizon Zero Dawn and Ghost of Tsushima. From making open world, edgy, superpowered games to making an authentic samurai game that is top tier, that puts other companies who they've made their bread and butter to be medieval action games, Ubisoft. They essentially perfected the open world and Ubisoft formula to the highest level. Polish is the game and the word that I would use to associate with Ghost of Tsushima. Guerrilla Games, who made Horizon Zero Dawn, they completely changed genres as well, from making kind of middling and mediocre first-person shooters to making a very unique post-apocalyptic world RPG in Horizon Zero Dawn. Or, in my opinion, it's more so an action-adventure game, because the RPG elements are definitely lacking in that case, but it's a great action-adventure game. They've reached unprecedented success with their games, but this new console generation began to change everything. Now, Microsoft definitely got the W by having the simply superior console in terms of performance. Now, and it's also the same price as the PlayStation 5 that is slightly inferior in terms of performance. Now, it's not aesthetically attractive as many people have compared it to a fridge, and that ended up them releasing their very own cool version of their fridge, Xbox Series X, but I digress. But a side note, it is a bit disappointing when your flagship RPG of 2023 from your biggest acquisition, Starfield, only will run at 30 frames per second on the most powerful console in the world. Bit strange, is it?
All of this just works. It's not, I'm not kidding.
It just works, little lights starting, shows people buy money flows, it just works.
I digress, but Xbox were making a conscious effort to regain a big fan base in the gaming community. Back during the 360 games, they had the gaming community definitely in a chokehold, so they definitely know what they need to do in order to get that back. Subscription gaming has completely revolutionized the way in which gamers interact with games and how we value them. I'll go deeper into the possible ramifications later, but let's first discuss something we never would have expected to happen in the Xbox space. Xbox called for a stimulus package from their big daddy, Microsoft. They needed some assistance to able to kind of even the odds with considering how much they've been kind of embarrassed by PlayStation as a whole. Not only did we see the biggest gaming acquisitions in the past 2 years, we've probably seen some of the biggest just company acquisitions just in general. A huge amount of coin was splashed at the problem. Xbox saw that they were losing and they chose to throw money at the problem. Other companies may complain that they're not playing fair, they're taking advantage. But we'd still be lying if we said the solution isn't working. Let's consider the statistics. Microsoft in the past years have acquired 2 huge juggernauts. They have acquired ZeniMax Media, which includes Bethesda games, which includes Arcane, Skyrim, Fallout, all of these great and huge IPs. Dishonored, all of these big and notable IPs, big boys in the RPG space. They've also acquired Blizzard, Activision. These are huge gaming companies that are responsible for Call of Duty, Overwatch, Candy Crush. They've acquired King as well. So they've acquired some huge companies. And if we're looking at the paper, it shows that Microsoft isn't lacking at all in terms of the bag. Just acquiring ZeniMax Media cost them over $8.1 billion. And acquiring Activision Blizzard, which they recently won the court case for to acquire, is $68.1 billion to acquire that entire conglomerate. Clearly, Xbox has their sights on becoming the top dog in the gaming industry. And looking at what they're doing, depending on the decision that Xbox makes, it's going to be quite difficult for PlayStation to compete in that regard. Now, let's consider the people that they picked up. These guys aren't amateurs at all. If we're talking about in the RPG space, Microsoft have acquired the most popular and most successful RPG game developers in the modern day. Bethesda, Obsidian, Arcane, excluding, CD Projekt Red, FromSoft Games, BioWare. If we're talking about narrative and choice-driven RPGs, they just might have the best guys in the business. Say what you want, but if we're talking about single-player games, RPGs are probably the top dogs in terms of communities and fan bases, because people can definitely fall in love with the world, the characters, and everything that they're able to create, and of course the player choice. Even me personally, RPGs are actually what made me fall in love with the gaming genre. So with Starfield and other RPGs being Xbox exclusives, it's probably the first time in years that I've actually had some sort of incentive to actually go out and get a game on Xbox or on PC. Now, PlayStation have also tried and made some few acquisitions of some smaller companies. I think the most notable one that they acquired was probably Bungie, the developers of Destiny. They of course don't have the same monetary backing that Microsoft has, but they're definitely on a very high level. Now, why are we talking about acquisitions even in the first place? Well, the reason we're even speaking about acquisitions in the very first place is because of the decision and the very thing that Xbox introduced, Game Pass. They essentially copied the Netflix subscription model and applied it to gaming. Thanks to them acquiring these big companies and acquiring licenses from many other developers, they're able to create a catalog so people can essentially rent games, play them, finish them, and move on to the next one for a very cheap and affordable package. You're able to play a huge array of games for a very affordable price. The point of this is to hook you into the schedule and get you paying for Game Pass every single month. So they secured, I have a customer who's going to be paying these bills every single month, and I'm assured of their money, and they have a very good and secure flow of coin while providing their customers with a huge amount of value by them being able to play these games pretty much anytime they want, if they're of course connected to the internet and have an updated version of Game Pass they've paid to have their subscription. That's essentially how it works, and this has essentially shifted the entire gaming sphere as a whole. No longer do you have to pay the $60 or now $70 fee to be able to procure a game. You can just get Game Pass and play it immediately after you finish downloading it. And Microsoft have done something interesting with the gaming companies that they've acquired. They're saying you will get it first day on Game Pass. No longer do you have to pay an exuberant fee for a brand new Microsoft title. No, you'll be able to play it first day on Game Pass for absolutely not free, but included in your very affordable subscription package. Now, because of this, they've kind of forced the hand of other gaming companies, particularly PlayStation, to revolutionize their also older system of PlayStation Plus. PlayStation Plus before would only give you 2 or maybe 3 games per month that you could play and claim, and as long as you had your PlayStation Plus subscription package, you'd be able to play those games and have a good time. And Xbox also had a similar model, and that's how essentially the community worked in that sense. But they completely changed it up because now PlayStation have to compete with Game Pass. Their model was essentially make high quality exclusives that people are going to come and buy. Get exclusive deals, get exclusive cosmetics to incentivize people to come and play their consoles and buy games on their systems. Now the market has kind of changed. The value proposition of a Game Pass has forced PlayStation to change their model as well. Now PlayStation has revolutionized their PlayStation Plus, and they essentially offer the exact same thing that Game Pass does. Difference is that of course you have access to some of the PlayStation exclusives and some multitude of other games from different gaming companies. So if you're on PlayStation or if you're on Xbox, you'll be able to enjoy a huge array of games for a very, very affordable price. And I'll be honest with you, bro, as a customer, as a consumer, this is a great value proposition and a huge W for me, because there are a huge amount of games that were on my wish list that I was waiting to play because I just didn't have the money to get there at the time. With this Game Pass, I've been able to scratch off perhaps 80 or 70% of my wish list just thanks to this new PlayStation Plus and Game Pass model. And I'll be honest with you, there are some games that I'm actually happy that I was able to avoid, because when I finally got my hands on them, I really wasn't vibing with it and I didn't really enjoy it. Namely, one of them being Control, which is a game that quite a few people enjoy, but for me personally, it just didn't hit for me. I didn't enjoy the combat and just everything about it, and ended up moving to something else. If I had paid quite an exuberant fee for that game, I definitely would have been more annoyed. But because of that, my mindset has completely shifted. And this is what I'm talking about when I was talking about the ramifications of implementing such a system. Are they positive or are they negative? That's the question that I want to pose to you guys, and I want you guys to consider this. I'll be honest, when I consider my childhood, there are a number of games that I would play and I cherish them to this day. Scarcity increases something's value. Now, because of Game Pass, the value of games essentially has decreased exponentially, because now you have such a huge array. You don't have to play anything that you don't like even for longer than a second. You can drop it and move on to something else. You'll definitely find something that you definitely enjoy. Now, I don't know how this is going to affect game developers, the value of games, and how much people support the industry, just because of this subscription model. I don't know how it's going to affect them, how it's going to affect the bag, and whether this is good or bad for developers. Undoubtedly, this is a great thing for the consumer, but for developers, I really wonder if this is something that's going to help or hurt them. Now, this is the thing. This is what makes me worry slightly. This seems kind of like maybe an attack on independent game developers. What you have to understand is that there is competition and there are things such as oligopolies and monopolies. Monopoly is when one company essentially owns everything and they control everything. And that seems to be, in a sense, what Microsoft is doing. Now, there are pros and cons to this. Because the companies are now part of a big company, they have a much larger budget, you would think, to be able to create high quality games. But at the very same time, they have control. They've essentially reduced the amount of competition that is out there on the market. There is now probably less than 5 top tier RPG game developers that are out free in the market that are completely independent, which makes things a little bit different. If you completely own something and the people can only essentially get that product from you, you can essentially increase the price and decrease the quality and people will still buy it. This is why I'm saying it's kind of a hit on independent developers. How many people are going to continue to buy specifically from these independent developers? Are they going to feel forced to perhaps move their content onto Game Pass in order for them to get more playtime? Are they perhaps going to feel forced that maybe I should actually join a big boy company in order for us to be able to compete? Because that's another thing. If they're now part of this big company, they now can produce games of an extremely high quality that they wouldn't be able to do if they were independent. This could be a good or a bad thing. There are pros and cons, so no matter how you slice this. I'm not sure how all of this is going to pan out, and I definitely hope for the best and hope that eventually we are not exploited by this system of subscription gaming. We're going to see how it pans out, and I'm going to keep a keen eye on how these gaming companies continue to operate in this sense. But I'm very interested to see if this is going to be a good or a bad thing overall. So guys, those are my thoughts. We talked about the state of gaming and the various things that have changed over the years and how much Microsoft has essentially changed the entire framework of the gaming industry through the introduction of Game Pass, thanks to their big boy capital and their many acquisitions. Tell me your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think it's a good or a bad thing? We know that monopolies in general aren't good, as competition is usually what creates good products for the consumers and for the products. But we'll see how everything pans out. Tell me your thoughts down there in the comments and take it easy, gents.